It's David Arquette. This is a message from me, David Arquette, saying thank you. Thank you so much for being a fan of the Scream movies. I also heard you have a podcast called Don't Go Out There. I wish you all the best with that. Thanks for being a fan and keep watching movies. Keep doing things you love. You're the greatest. Don't let anyone tell you different.
This is Joseph Whipp, Sheriff Burke from the original Scream, and you're listening to the Don't Go Out There Horror Movie Review Podcast.
Hello? Who is this? This is Roger L. Jackson, Ghostface, from the Scream franchise, and you're listening to the Don't Go Out There Horror Movie Review Podcast. So you like scary movies, huh? What's your favorite scary movie? And it better be the right answer, or well, you know the rest. Thank you. You're such a lovely audience. We'd like to take you home with us. Or better yet, see you in your home.
In a world where zombies, ghosts, serial killers, and vampires all exist, it's Nico, Brian, Mike, and Dustin, and they are all that stand between you and the films that could end the world. Welcome to the Don't Go Out There Horror Movie
Welcome back,
Podcast.
everybody, to the Don't Go Out There Horror Movie Podcast. Just want to thank all of our fans and listeners. We really appreciate all support. You guys are awesome. Before we get into tonight's film review, I just want to give a quick shout out to our website, don'tgoouthere.com. My man Brian has done a fantastic job with the website. He's got it looking great. Everything about our podcast is on there. All of our episodes and interviews from episode 1 to our weekly release. If you want to check out all of our episodes there, maybe you have an office job, don't have access to your phone, you can listen on your desktop computer. We've done some incredible interviews in the past with some of the biggest names in horror, some of your favorite slashers, writers, directors. Check out our interviews if you haven't heard those yet. We got our store. We got some new T-shirts. Brian and Dustin have done some fantastic designs if you want to check those out. And we also have Shan's Etsy page attached as well if you want to grab a tumbler. And we also have our social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. We love interacting with our fans. We love, meeting new people. We love answering your comments and questions on the air. So definitely check us out on social media. And the last thing I want to shout out is our Patreon. We call it Blood Donors. We have the traditional monthly reoccurring kind. You're a big fan of our podcast, a big fan of our show. You want to help support us. That option is available. And we also have one-time donations. If you want to donate and, if you have a film review you want us to do, that option is available as well.
All right, guys, let's jump to the film review. Really excited to review this movie, give it a better review than what we did, 296 episodes ago, something like that. We're reviewing 1996's Scream, a movie that Dustin wasn't a part of the review for, so I'm excited to have Dustin join us. I'm really excited just to re-review this movie in general. I re-listened to about the first 15 minutes of our episode the other day at work. My God, we've gotten so much better. But hey, I just want to thank all our fans who stuck by. It was literally our third time ever doing it. We didn't know what the fuck we was doing. Man, I feel like we put out a good product now, and I'm really excited to re-review Scream 1996. I think it's a really good movie, and I'm going to stop there, and I'm just going to leave all of my thoughts for the rating.
Well, what's crazy real quick, you said that you're thankful of our fans, stuck around and everything. You also mentioned I wasn't on that episode. I want to point out that listening to this episode when y'all originally released it, it was like, damn, I gotta come in and help these guys.
That's what it was.
I was just kidding. I mean, obviously I'm friends with y'all, but I thought y'all did great on the episode when I myself was just a fan, and that's not me just blowing smoke up your ass. I enjoyed it.
Well, at least we all had our original notes, right? Okay.
All right, so as of 2023, when we're doing this is the only Scream movie that I've not had the privilege of being able to see in the theater. But, I mean, if you want to talk about comfort food like we've discussed in the past, this movie was and still is comfort food to me. I watched this movie probably hundreds of times through high school. This is my favorite horror movie of all time. 09 Friday is right there. But this is definitely it. I mean, it has the best opening sequence of all time. I don't have a problem saying that definitively, but I will preface this next thing with, in my opinion, the best horror director of all time, and many would agree the best final girl of all time. And, like we touched on in Nightmare 2 weeks ago, this redefined the genre for a second time. And as one of the most influential horror movies ever made, it's a celebration of horror movies and a whodunit that, it's a fun mystery. But once you get the reveal, to me, it doesn't take anything away from it upon rewatch after rewatch. And all the credit in the world to someone I've definitely spoken highly of their work over the years of us doing this show, Kevin Williamson. I'm very excited to be re-reviewing this one and hope the fans are too.
Yeah. So, look, shocker, and I guess we're throwing it back to the old days of the show here. I agree with Brian. Everything this motherfucker said. That used to be the motto on the show. No, look, man. Now, Halloween 78 is my favorite horror movie of all time. But, I mean, if we're just talking a race, this is finishing right just underneath it. I fucking love this movie. It's literally the perfect horror movie to me. It has everything you could possibly ask for from a horror movie. Gruesome kills, just scenes that make you laugh, which I know some people don't like in the horror, but I fucking do. It has 10 scenes, the best opening scene in, I think, film history. Not just horror movie history, fucking film history. One of the best third acts in horror movie history to me. Everything inside the house I think is great. The cast is perfect. All the stars align. I mean, Neve Campbell, Skeet Ulrich, who has a funny name, Matthew Lillard, Rose McGowan, all those. Man, the fucking Fonz is in this movie, okay? This movie has everything you can ask for, directed by one of the GOATs, and the simplicity of the Ghostface costume makes it for me. Anybody can be Ghostface. The whodunit aspect of this franchise, but in particular, this installment in the franchise, I think is pulled off to perfection, even though they give it away. They give it away, but you still don't realize it the first time you watch it. And I think that's what makes it so fun is when you go back and watch it, you start to see these things and connect dots and so many classic lines. And now I'm just slobbering all over its knob. Go ahead, Dustin.
Yeah, I'd never seen this movie before, and I'm just kidding. I love this movie. I've told you guys, I've said it before. This franchise and Saw are my two favorite horror franchises. And so, if we were a Venn diagram, the hosts were a Venn diagram, I'm the middle. Nico's the Saw, Brian and Mike are the Scream side, and I'm right in the middle. These are my two favorites. And I know it's kind of crazy saying I was in the middle of these guys, but
you could say we're all in this together.
You could say that. You could say that. I love it. I mean, obviously I wasn't on the episode when you guys originally did it, but I went back after I joined and kind of retroactively scored some movies. And when I did all that, and then even when we this was a part of the 3131, or we did the other Scream movies, I did this. I took bias out of it. I tried to be objective. I tried to just be like, how good of a movie is this? And so I rated this movie way too low. So I'm very glad that we're redoing it so that I can actually get on here and give a updated opinion on it and give a score that does reflect my bias, because everything we say on the show is biased unless we're saying facts. And so, this movie is so enjoyable. I texted you guys when I was rewatching it, and I was like, this movie is the textbook definition of a fun horror movie. Like, it's got everything. It's you can laugh at it. You can have fun with it. It's got its tense moments. The acting is great. I mean, you mentioned the Fonz is in it. Henry Winkler is not even credited. Like, that's how great the cast is.
That's true. Yeah. That's true.
I love everything about it. And not only do I love this movie as a standalone, but I love it because it spawned so many other good movies. There's not a bad movie in the franchise. Even when people want to shit on part 3, you can have a lot of fun with part 3.
It's fun.
I've said it many times.
Yeah.
Part 3 is underrated. It's the only one that's got Jay and Silent Bob in it. So, and of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that this movie has the GOAT of movie cops, Deputy Dewey Riley. So I love it.
Also, shout out to this movie birthing the catchphrase of Mike loves meta. So this movie is the reason why I love meta horror, because it hasn't been done better since this. Although Cabin in the Woods does a really nice job, but to me, and I love New Nightmare, and that kind of birthed this movie in a sense, as far as just like the script that Kevin Williamson wrote, the spin with all the meta. But man, this really opened up that genre, and I'm thankful for it, because I love when you give a wink and a nod to your audience like that.
And let me say one more thing that bears repeating. I mean, we said it 2 weeks ago, but we can't be a one-stop shop for everything with these big-time classics. I would definitely, with this one, recommend going out and getting friend of the show, Patrick Maroney's It All Began with a Scream book. A lot of what I use in here came from that book, and I've seen this movie hundreds of times, like legit. And most of what I read in that book, I didn't know for myself. So it's worth picking up if you're a Scream or honestly just a horror fan in general.
Yeah, definitely shout out to Patrick. I'm just going to give a quick fun fact, and I hope I don't steal it for anybody, but I watched a panel. Henry Winkler made an appearance, and the reason why he wasn't credited is because he was the Fonz. They thought that he would bring comedy aspect to this horror movie, so they didn't credit him. But when the screen audience watched it, they cheered for him. So the same press people who said, we're not going to cast it, or we're not going to put you in the credits, they called him over, and he did this. Will you do press for us? It was hilarious. So shout out to Henry Winkler.
The GOAT, my man.
All right, guys, listeners, this is going to be a long episode, just judging by how long my scene by scene is. And Brian's already said he's got a lot of notes, so just bear with us.
Yes.
I'm excited to review it. Bear with me. I got sick a couple days ago, still fighting that off, but let's jump into the scene by scene. Film starts with title card as Casey answers the phone. They ask who this is suspiciously, and she hangs up. They call back, but she hangs up again, not wanting to talk. She puts on some Jiffy Pop, and they call back again. Casey says she's about to watch a scary movie. What's your favorite scary movie, she's asked. Halloween is her answer, and she asks his favorite scary movie. He asks if she has a boyfriend, and she says she doesn't. He asks for her name and says he wants to know who he's looking at. She gets scared, locking the doors, and hangs up. He calls back, but she hangs up again. Another call, and he yells, "You hang up on me again, I'll gut you like a fish." She panics and begins locking all the doors. He asks if she can see him. She threatens to call the police. He wants to see what her insides look like. The doorbell rings and he calls back. She admits she has a boyfriend. He's big, plays football, and will kick the shit out of them. Caller knows his name and she sees he's bound to a chair outside. I want to play a game, the caller says. Movie trivia is the game. He asks, who's the killer in Halloween? She answers correctly and is now asked who the killer is in Friday the 13th. She says Jason, but is told that's wrong. There's a bonus round, but poor Steve is out. Steve is gutted as Casey retreats. What door am I at? A chair is thrown through the patio door, and she runs to the kitchen, grabbing a kitchen knife. She sees someone run through the house, and she goes outside. She sees her parents' car approaching, and she crawls away. She looks up and sees the masked killer. She punches him with the phone and runs. She stops and is tackled by Ghostface. She runs again, and he grabs her from behind and stabs her in the chest. He mounts her and chokes her until she knees him in the crotch. She walks to the porch but can't scream. They notice the damage inside as Casey is stabbed again. They yell for Casey and call the police. Mom hears her on the other line. Mom goes outside and sees her daughter dead, hanging from the tree. All right, Brian, that's the opening scene. Nothing major there. What are your thoughts on it?
Really, what can you say about this opening scene? I mean, like I said, the best in horror history, in my opinion. Right off the bat, this thing catches me because you get all of these self-aware horror references that we'd never seen in a movie before. Like, it wasn't some generic movie they were referencing. It was our favorite movie, genre movies at that time. And, that was crazy awesome to me. And it sucked me in as an audience member very quickly. But, then it flips those horror tropes on its head. I mean, we get who we thought at the time was a star final girl of the movie, and Drew Barrymore, dying in the opening. Like, it's hard to put into words how big that was at the time. I mean, in fact, something I just learned, I knew Barrymore went to Craven to suggest this because she was already originally cast as Sydney, but I didn't realize that it was 6 weeks right before the filming. I mean, that was crazy to me. I just learned that myself. I also learned from It All Began with a Scream that Weinstein wreaked havoc on this production. I mean, especially at the beginning, hated the mask, kept trying to get Craven to change it. Finally, he gave in and they settled on this mask from Fun World, which, as you know, Craven wanted something that would just be easy for the killers to just pick up at a local store. In fact, Nico, sidebar, that Part 4 mask that I ordered to get Skeet and Matthew and Rose to sign at Pensacon was, in fact, a Fun World brand mask. Hansi Weinstein apparently also raised hell about what Barrymore was wearing, wanted her more skimpy. You don't say. And she finally ended up just going out and buying her own clothes and trumping everyone else in the argument because I'm motherfucking Drew Barrymore, bitches. And man, just friend of the show, Robert L. Jackson. What can you say? I mean, apparently producers had originally intended to use Jackson's voice only as a placeholder, dubbing it over during post-production. But again, thanks to Craven, they decided that Jackson's contribution was perfect and kept it. West described it as an intelligent and evil voice that would obviously become irreplaceable for the franchise. I mean, he is the Ghostface voice. I love the line about the Elm Street movies too. Craven initially removed it and felt it was too self-serving, but Williamson, my boy, convinced him to keep it in because it's, it's how people would really talk. And I may not agree with the line because I like New Nightmare in Part 3. But again, I love it. And Williamson is just so good at writing teenagers. I mean, Dawson's Creek, I Know What You Did Last Summer, The Faculty. The dude knows what he's doing when it comes to writing teenagers. And lastly, something else that just, again, helps this movie lend itself so damn well to rewatches that you notice in that final game, with Casey and the killers ask her to guess which of the two doors he's hiding behind. It's implied that Casey seemed to guess wrong, but knowing what you know after the reveal, since there are two killers, whichever door Casey chose, the other killer would have been waiting for her on the other side. So it's awesome. I could talk forever on this scene. Go ahead, Mike.
I highly recommend whoever views this movie as a comedy to go watch this scene one more time. Immerse yourself, lock in, and watch this opening scene, Casey Becker's death. Because there's nothing ha-ha about, and even the funny moments, you're removed from them very quickly. This scene is perfect to me. Starting off, even the different sounds you get, how loud the phone is, Roger Jackson's just iconic voice, and even the popcorn popping it's just an iconic sound. I'm already locked in. I want to know where this goes. It's sound, the score and everything. It's just so perfect. And I love how, and he does this even better in later movies, but how Roger Jackson's Ghostface voice starts out kind of mellow. It's raspy now, but it starts out kind of mellow and starts to escalate as things go on. I think it's hilarious that she throws out the line that he's a football player and kick her. Man, I played football, coached football. That doesn't mean shit. There's some soft ass football players, so that doesn't mean shit, especially to somebody that's about to try to murder you. I just love all the horror movie nods here. I love mentioning Halloween, of course. The Nightmare on Elm Street line I think is great. One, obviously, there's Wes Craven, but two, it's factually incorrect. No matter what Dustin said, there are good sequels in the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. New Nightmare, Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3. What?
This is funny you mentioned New Nightmare. I believe in the original Scream episode, you didn't like New Nightmare. So,
well, I'm glad that we can all change our opinions. That's weird how that works. Weird how that happens, huh? Anyway,
there you go.
First of all, Drew Barrymore probably doesn't get enough flowers for her acting in this performance, because her screen time is very limited, but she's fantastic here. How, again, she goes from typical teenager acting to just like slowly but surely the fear starts to overcome. Like you could see it in her eyes, the screams, the cries, just how that starts to slowly build. And again, this whole chase thing is great. It's, chase scenes are kind of iconic in the Scream franchise. We get another few good ones later here in the movie. But I love how great Roger Jackson is here. And I love that you get some gore, especially in the unrated version, just the guts hanging from the tree multiple times. I think is perfect because, again, you really get I think Scream just gets a bad rep, for being a ha-ha film, when really, man, we've got some tough gore here, some really serious shit happening, and Casey Becker's kill, of course, that shocked audiences. Drew Barrymore's face is all over the poster, all over the marketing. The poster, thanks to Brother Brian, is now hanging in the office here. It's funny that we're redoing this movie now that I have this poster looking over me. But again, great scene, just iconic. And shout out to, the tip of the cap to Psycho for killing off the big star very early on. A lot earlier than they killed Janet Leigh, obviously. But, still that subtle nod to, okay, we're going into all the horror tropes, but now we're going to flip them on their head a little bit. Some of us on this show appreciate Psycho, the smart ones anyway. Go ahead, Dustin.
Yeah, I mean, this is the best opening scene in horror history. Mike, you mentioned that maybe you'd argue in all of cinema. I got to say The Dark Knight, Goodfellas, those come to mind.
Very close second and third, buddy. Very close.
Yeah, I mean, arguments could be made regardless. This is definitely elite. It captures everything they tried to accomplish perfectly, and to have the balls to kill off Drew Barrymore immediately is just, chef's kiss. What's your favorite scary movie? Iconic line, plus all the references to other horror movies, just great. Something that I like. You don't have to be too on the nose, but when you acknowledge that pop culture exists in movies, I like that. I mentioned that to Brian when I was talking about that new Ninja Turtles movie, how many pop culture references there are in it. I love that, because too often movies and shows act like their universe is all that exists. Nothing else really exists other than, and I don't know. That kills with me. When he says, I want to know who I'm looking at, that's a great oh shit moment. Like the whole tone shifts. And this movie also proves that Biggie was right. More money, more problems. If they didn't live in such a nice house, there wouldn't have been so many doors and windows. Ghostface wouldn't have had so many easy access points. You can feel her heart fall through her asshole when he says that says Steve's name on the phone. That's just great acting by Barrymore there. You can really feel her emotions. They also do a great job at concealing Ghostface's identity for Steve's death. Like the lights going down, when they come back up, you kind of see a shadow. It makes his reveal of the look even more meaningful to me. When she goes outside with the knife and sees the headlights, though, why did she not hang up the damn phone and call 911? And then she stopped running not only once, but twice. Once to look at Steve, and then once to look at her parents' car approaching. It's like she wanted to die. So that is a nitpick with me. Like if I'm running away from a killer and I see my parents' car, I'm probably not going to stop until I get to the damn car. But the panic and then terror displayed by the parents is so real. That's very well done. Again, that's great acting by people who are only on screen for 90 seconds. Like that's just incredible. So this opening scene is, other than that those nitpicks I have about when Casey was outside her home, this is a perfect opening scene.
The unanimous number one best horror opening scene on Don't Go Out There. You can listen to that episode. Where at, Brian?
Don'tGoOutThere.com.
That's not a new jingle.
All right. Sydney is on her computer until she hears noise outside her window. Billy scares her, climbing inside, and there's a knock at her bedroom door. He says he heard screaming and asks if she's okay. Dad's going to sleep. He has an early flight. Billy says he was watching The Exorcist, and it reminded him of her. He says things have changed in their relationship. Lately, they're edited for television. Billy wants a little dry hump action. He tries to slide his hand up, but Sydney stops him. Billy leaves now and says he's not trying to rush her. She gives him another kiss and asks if he'd settle for a PG-13 relationship, and flashes her boobs. We're at school now as the news covers the murder and police are all over. Tatum walks up on Sydney telling her Casey and Steve were killed last night. Sydney is devastated hearing what happened. Dewey said it's the worst case they've seen in years. Sydney is called to the principal's office now. Burke and Dewey question her now. We meet our group outside by the water fountain. Tatum and Stu debate on if it was a man or a woman, and it's revealed Stu dated Casey for a bit. Randy asks if Stu was with Tatum before or after killing Casey. More dialogue, and I can't do it all justice. Go watch the damn movie. More dialogue as Billy punches Stu and Sydney walks off. Sydney is dropped off at home. Tatum says she'll pick her up later after practice at this nice-ass house Sydney has. She packs up some things and sits on the couch. She turns the news on as she hears Gail speaking on her mother's rape and murder. She walks away and looks at a picture of her and her mom. She lies down on the couch and falls asleep. All right, Brian, go ahead. That's the next set of scenes.
Bam. You were wondering how you follow up the best opening scene of all time? You get introduced to arguably the best final girl of all time. And we get Billy climbing through the window the same way Glenn climbed through Nancy's in Elm Street. And look, there's so many casting rumors about her, but for sure, we know Nev originally said no to the movie until she heard her co-star Skeet Ulrich from The Craft was going to be in it. And their chemistry, I mean, it shows it. It's so good. It's like Heather Langenkamp and Johnny Depp on steroids. Honestly, there's just so much that just happened to come together in this movie. I mean, you find out later. It's a wonder we got this movie the way that it is. Nev is so perfect in this franchise, and the evolution of her character throughout all 6 movies so far, or all 5 movies, I guess, is just, I love it so much. Oh, I didn't mention it in the open, but can we talk about soundtrack real quick? I mean, Marco Beltrami's first film, he credits this to launching his career, a career that it's led to 2 Academy Award nominations since then. He said he decided to intentionally disregard conventional horror scores and approach the film as a Western. And man, it's so legendary. Don't Fear the Reaper here at the start, slow down, just fucking perfect. The rest of the set of scenes serves as, I guess, a real introduction to everyone else. And we didn't know it then, but this world building and the entire foundation of this entire franchise is right here in this set of scenes. Like everything from the history of Maureen Prescott to characters that live on through the entire franchise thus far, like one way or the other. Shout out friend of the show, Joseph Whipp's Sheriff Burke. Mentioned him last week as Sergeant Parker in the OG Nightmare. But Kevin Williamson actually stated in an interview, quote, "So the backstory there that I put in this is that he was so upset by the events in Nightmare on Elm Street that he moved to a small town in Northern California and became the sheriff." So that's a little fun canon there. And of course, friend of the show, Lynn McCree. Listen to her interview at don'tgoouthere.com.
There it is.
Look, we're introduced to truly the GOAT. You could argue her or Nancy if you really want to, but I think squarely 1A and 1B for sure. And you guys put in our group chat a couple days ago about your favorite portrayal of Sidney Prescott, and I think there's a good argument to be made for 5, even 4 a little bit. But Brian likes her in 2. This is still my favorite. Like, I can't really put my finger on it, but there's something about the just like not naivete, but just the fact that she's still a badass, but like a little bit inexperienced. So not quite sure what's around the corner, but is willing to stand her ground. I just love her character development here. Skeet Ulrich, Billy Loomis. Shout out to the name Loomis. That's another tip of the cap to Halloween. Love that. And, of course, Psycho as well. But I like their dynamic. And the reason I like their dynamic is because you can tell even early on, even before you know the ending, which is kind of hard to do now because it's so famous. Billy Loomis is a little nasty, a little greasy. And Sidney Prescott's just like, kind of perfect daddy's little girl type situation here. Her giving the boob flash, I thought is hilarious because, again, she's willing to stand her ground, say no, doesn't give in to Billy's demands, for lack of a better term. And now we have this, relationship where like, hey, you're going to have to fucking wait, man. And I like their dynamic. Then we get to the school. First of all, get the fucking Fonz. Good portrayal right here by Nev Campbell. But you mentioned the world building. I love the Scream franchise is even more meta because of this. When you think about it, this movie was about kind of taking those tropes, pointing them out, making fun of them, flipping them on their head. In doing so, they made their own tropes because as the Scream franchise continues, every single Scream has one of these scenes where all the friends are sitting out together outside, whether it's a school or some other building, talking to each other. That is the world building that we're talking about. So if you have a Scream movie, got to have one of these scenes. So that's a trope that the franchise created on its own. Love the dialogue. In hindsight, Billy and Stu look fucking guilty as shit here. But I do think Matthew Lillard is great. And this is the start of one of my favorite characters in the franchise. Shout out to Stu, still alive, obviously. I'm not allowed to have an opinion. I'm not allowed to have an opinion on this show. God damn it. Anyway, love Matthew Lillard's portrayal here. I know that later he gets criticized by some people for how he kind of acts in the third act, but not me. I think he's great. I love this talking scene. I know you mentioned you can't do it justice, Nico. Neither can I. Go watch it because I do think once we meet Randy and we meet Stu, we're rounding out this cast of characters, and it's just perfect. Like I said in the open, the stars aligned. They casted this movie so fucking well. And again, Randy, I said it in our original review, but Randy is us. Randy is the horror fan, the horror nerd that knows all this shit that we know that you listen to this show for. So Randy is like all of us squished into one character, and that's why he's one of my favorites in horror movie history.
I don't know. I'd like to think that we're not as much of a virgin as him, but
look, man, it's an amalgamation, pal. I don't know why I went Vince McMahon on you there. I'm sorry.
You got a 5-syllable word, and we're only in the second set of scenes. Holy shit! We get a good old jump scare to start this scene, and a good introduction to Billy and Sydney. My man is horny. I'm not saying I condone sneaking in the window, but I understand. Look at her. I love the acoustic version of "Don't Fear the Reaper" playing. Also love that it's playing when we meet Billy, because she doesn't fear him and he's the Reaper. So that's cool. We get just a great score as we go to the school and see Gail reporting. I mean, the score in the Scream movies is so perfect, and we'll get into, the cream of the crop in a little bit when we hear it, but fantastic. I love when Sydney's going to the principal's office, how Principal Embry says she's the daughter of, alluding to Maureen's story, but we don't really get the backstory yet. And so, it alludes to that. I like that. That's well done. Great subtlety. And then this set of scenes is, you can't speak highly enough of it because it introduces us to the GOAT, Deputy Dewey Riley. Like I said, best movie cop ever. This is just a fantastic way, like you said, Brian, to follow up that fantastic open. This is a great way to follow it. Just we're meeting all of our major players here, and they're doing it in a way that's just still highly engaging.
All right, Sydney wakes up when the phone rings. Tatum says practice ran late and she's going to swing by the video store. Another call now, and it's a familiar voice. She thinks it's Randy and says she likes the voice he's doing. She doesn't like scary movies. They're all the same and insulting. He says he's not Randy, and the question isn't who am I, it's where am I. She opens the front door, calling his bluff. She looks around, finding no one. She asks if he can see her and what's she doing. She goes to hang up, and they say they'll kill her just like her mother. Ghostface emerges from behind, and they fight. He bashes her head on the floor, and she kicks him off of her as he goes to stab her. She runs in her room, barricading the door. She tries to call 911 to no success, but manages to contact 911 on her computer. Billy climbs up her window saying he heard screaming. They hug and a phone falls out of his pocket. She backs away in shock and runs off. She opens the front door and Dewey is there scaring her, holding the mask up. Billy is arrested and Sheriff asks if she can answer some questions. Tatum runs up saying she's staying with her. Gail arrives on the scene and is frustrated she missed the action. She asks Tatum if that was Sydney, and Tatum walks away from her. Gail insults her cameraman Kenny, calling him a fat ass and to move faster. Dewey reassures Sydney they'll find her dad. Sheriff interrogates Billy now, and Hank says to check the phone records. He asks if he rode by Casey Becker's house last night too. Billy is told he must be held until they get the phone records. Gail arrives to the police station, and Billy tries to talk to Sydney as he's taken away. Dewey says the costume is sold everywhere. They'll never be able to track the sale. Dewey tells Tatum to respect him as he takes she and Sydney out the back door. Gail and Kenny head to the back and call out for Sydney. She asks Gail how's the book and walks off. I'll send you a copy, Gail says, and Sydney mollywops her. All right, Brian, next set of scenes, go ahead.
Again, so at the start of this, just the interaction with Tatum and Sydney over the phone, it feels natural. Again, all the credit to Kevin Williamson for writing dialogue that, once again, sounds realistic. And to Rose and Nev, like how I have them on a first name basis now, for their acting, like just props to them. And then we get right into the first Sydney Ghostface call, which is another thing. I mean, the pacing in this movie is phenomenal. I'm never bored, especially for a 2-hour long movie. It's just, like I said, great pacing to me. And I know we've talked about this before, and everyone probably knows that Roger Jackson stayed away from the cast and would really be on the phone with them for these calls. But shout out to this one, kind of like that first call where it's playing around and then you hang up on me and you'll die like your mother. And then it's just like all bets are off. I love the irony with her running up the stairs after she just said that about horror tropes, but I really love the callback from the Billy bedroom scene that we just saw with the closet door being able to block the bedroom door. That's always stood out to me. I mean, even as a kid. A little fun fact too, I never knew Sydney types her distress call out to, that online 911 system. And she actually entered 34 Elm Street as her address, but it was cut for time. Really nice little nod. I never knew about there. And speaking of the pacing and not getting boring, I mean, at this point, we're 45 minutes into the movie, and yeah, I mean, characters like Gale and Dewey and even Tatum to an extent have been introduced, but we haven't sat down and really spent time with them yet. So unlike most movies where by this point, I mean, you know everything about these people, and so it'd be like, okay, plot, hurry up. It's almost like watching a whole new movie now for the next like good bit, because now we get to flush out who these characters are more, and Sydney takes a little bit of a back seat while we're really introduced to, I mean, the brother and sister dynamic with Tatum and Dewey, and of course Gale and Dewey, which I know is more in the next set of scenes, but I really wanted to point out here too. And it's just it's really incredible and unique in a horror franchise, especially to not only have continuity between movies and this core, I guess that we didn't know then, but like I said before, become family between themselves and us. We watch them go through their lives and kind of get started in this movie. Makes it even different viewing experience watching it now rather than 20 plus years ago, if that makes sense.
Yeah, man. I love this first Sydney and Ghostface phone call. Like you mentioned, kind of, like I mentioned in the open, kind of mellow, starting out slow. Sydney's not really here for the bullshit. And then he flips that switch, talks about her mom dying, and it's just a completely different scene all of a sudden. And Nev is great here. You can see the fear kind of take over, how she's walking a little different. She's talking a little different. Is he in the house? Is he at the house? Like whatever. And she talks, she does the line about running up the stairs. Of course, that's exactly what she does. I think that was the setup there for the punchline, which I appreciated, even in hindsight, even if it's on the nose. I go back to this movie sometimes and I remember not very many horror movies have the final girl and the main killer interact this early in the film. Like as far as slashers go, like, Laurie and Michael wait till the very end. Freddie and Nancy, a little bit, but like not much, because he's teasing and they finally meet face to face. There's just not a ton of this like interaction between, the killer of the film and the final girl this early on. I know we're 45 minutes in, but that's pretty early considering the runtime for sure. But I like that we get an early chase scene. They become the staple of the franchise going forward. And again, here we are, got our introduction to Dewey, and most of my criticism of Dewey is tongue in cheek to fuck with Dustin. In this movie, lovable character, he really is, has a childlike presence, and I think it was played that way on purpose. You have to take him seriously as a man, but not really because he's fucking Dewey, at least in this movie. As the franchise goes on, you start to notice he becomes, I was about to say a little hardened, but I didn't want to get paused, but I think you guys know what I meant. But yeah, I mean, in this movie, I think it's the perfect encapsulation of what that character is. And Gale Weathers, we talked about it in our Scream 6 review about how I don't know if Gale is necessary anymore. But you go back to this first movie, I love the character of Gale. I think it's hilarious that Wes Craven didn't buy her in the casting at first because he didn't know if she could be, quote, bitchy enough just because of her character off Friends. Not a great show, by the way. Anyway, but just because of her character there, he wasn't sure she could portray. Buddy, he was way off base. She plays a perfect bitch. And sometimes it's a bitch that's right. Gale Weathers the whole time was right. May not have went about it the right way, but she was correct the entire time. And I think those are the bitchiest people sometimes. I love the Gale and Dewey dynamic that we get a little bit more later. Love the Gale and Sydney stuff. And I love that this punch, from somebody to Gale has become a staple of the franchise as well. Again, building their own tropes in the process of breaking down other tropes.
So this set of scenes, they mentioned renting the movie All the Right Moves. Man, that movie sucks. Sorry. I hated that damn movie. Brian, I watched it for the first time, I guess it was earlier this year. I did not like that movie, but I'm not a big Tom Cruise fan.
It's because you paused it just to see Tom Cruise's penis.
Or actually not at all. I did not. Anyway.
Sorry, what the fuck did you just say?
That's what she says in Scream.
That's what she
Damn,
says.
Dude.
That's what she talks about. That's the reason they're renting the movie, is if you pause at the right place. Anyway,
that's true.
I can't pass up on a moment this shit on Tom Cruise. I don't like him. Something in this movie that, in most movies ignore is how audible someone would be through walls and windows when they're talking on the phone. Like, you could hear another voice, especially if they're just in a closet. He wasn't whispering. So that's an oversight that's it's not specific and exclusive to this movie. A lot of movies do it. It's like he's on the phone with her this whole time and he's just in a fucking closet. She'd be able to hear his voice. Billy dropping the phone is a tense moment because it makes sense. Like, he just happens to be there right after the killer disappears. And then he dropped the phone when the killer called her first. Like, Sid had every right to freak out. I really like how that was done. And then Dewey freaking her out even more by holding up the mask to eye level. That was hilarious. When she opened the door and they both screamed. I love that. That was funny. Like you mentioned, Mike, Dewey's just got this lovable doofus, like, boyish quality to him. That's hilarious to me. Gail's such a bitch, but I do appreciate her going full Scott Steiner on the cameraman. Sounded like Steiner when he was talking about Samoa Joe. This fast son of a bitch. That's basically what she was saying. That was funny to me. Dewey's interaction with Tatum is hilarious. Like, what did Mom tell you? That was funny. It's like, you got to refer to me as a man of the law when I'm in uniform. Plays up his character even better. And the last thing I have is, man, hell of a right hook from Sydney. So that's signs of her being a badass right there. She punched the shit out of Gail. So respect to that. Good set of scenes.
Our Sydney and Tatum are in bed now, and Tatum asks if she thinks Billy really did it. Miss Riley tells Sydney she has a call. Sydney cries, realizing it's Ghostface again. She asks who this is, and he says she'll find out soon enough. Red Right Hand plays as we hear the news speaking on her mother's death and about Cotton Weary. Dewey tells Sydney Billy was released. His phone records were clean. Dewey takes him to school as news reporters hound dog her. Sydney walks up to Gail and says she needs to talk to her off camera. She asks if she thinks he's still innocent, and she confirms he hasn't changed a single word of his story. Gail asks if she's not sure anymore and says the murders are related, aren't they? Gail tells Kenny we need proof. We could save a man's life. And how beneficial that would be for her book sales. Sydney asks Stu about Billy as a student dressed as Ghostface runs through the halls. Sydney walks away and bumps into Billy. He says again it wasn't him and someone else called her last night. Billy is frustrated. She'd rather accuse him of being a killer than touch him. He says it's been a year. It's time to get over her death. I want my girlfriend back, and she storms away. Principal Hembry scolds two students with Ghostface masks, cutting them up, saying they're expelled. Sydney goes into the bathroom, and she overhears other girls saying she's lying and wonders if Sydney killed Casey and Steve. They call her a slut like her mother. The girls continue shit-talking Sydney until they leave. She looks under the stalls, seeing no one else. She asks if someone is there, and we see some boots step down. Sydney slides under an attacking Ghostface and runs out the bathroom. News reporter shows the camera the mask as Gail walks up to Dewey. She flirts with Dewey, asking if anything is going on campus. Principal announces classes are canceled, and there's a 9 p.m. curfew effective immediately. Gail asks if they found Sydney's father yet. He says no, and says she's much prettier in person. She says to call her Gail. All right, Brian, that's the next set of scenes. What'd you think?
Boom. The unofficial theme song of the franchise, Red Right Hand, makes its intro right here. Again, I love how, and yeah, they used Beltrami's amazing score, but also mixed in some real songs. And I definitely rocked with some Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds on the Scream 1 and Scream 2 albums when I was younger. Also, watching the set of scenes here showing the Cotton Weary telecast, I remember distinctly 4 years ago mentioning how there's almost this entire story that we don't get to see with Cotton and that entire thing. And that sparked something in me because 2 years ago, I wrote a spec script treatment that you can find now on our blog Under the Mask at don'tgoouthere.com. That is probably the most favorite idea I've ever written down. I called it Scream 1973. And I'm not trying to plug myself, but I do think that there's a prequel movie out there that can tie directly into this franchise. Go read it. Tell me what you think. I had forgotten I wrote Nico Chin in there too as the comic relief and stoner. Sorry, man, that made me laugh. But a few little Easter eggs here. Around 39 minutes, the reporter telling people, the people have a right to know, none other than Linda Blair. And, Tatum wearing that number 10 shirt as a nod to Glenn from Nightmare. This is definitely a case for me of the Mandela effect because I would have bet money that the shirt Tatum wore was the exact same design, not just the number 10 portion. Like, I thought the colors and everything were exactly the same. Crazy how your mind kind of makes that shit up, I guess. Now we go to a great, I feel, red herring scene with Hembry and the kids, well, as they're caught for running up and down the halls. But then the bathroom scene. And I've said this in the first episode that we reviewed this. I know, like, I've never been a big fan of this bathroom scene. I like the stuff with the Mean Girls. Fun fact, the cheerleader, Lenora Selfo, was Skeet Ulrich's girlfriend at the time. Also, fun fact, sidebar, I'm going down a rabbit hole here, but fun fact, she played in one of those direct-to-video movies, Dark Summer. That was a complete ripoff of I Know What You Did Last Summer. Like, you know those movies at the video store, like if you weren't careful, you could mistake even the packaging for the real movie? I don't know, useless info, but she was in one of those. But back to this. It's the only scene in the movie where I wish it wasn't someone trying to kill Sid, because it just doesn't make any sense to me. Like, it can't be Billy. And how would Stu know that she was even going to go in that bathroom? It just doesn't make any sense to me. It never has. And then, it's just kind of ignored after that. I don't know. The last thing I'll say, and I'll shut up, Dewey and Gail's relationship is just so natural and good. I mean, of course, we see that play out throughout the series and in real life, but it's just such a cornerstone of this entire franchise. And it really is.
Yeah, I agree. This is probably the set I have the least amount on. So you mentioned the bathroom scene, and that's pretty much all I really have notes on here because, again, we get a little bit of dialogue, a little bit of backstory. We get Billy being an ass. But here's the thing, Brian. A lot of people on the internet, on Frank Gore's internet, think that Ghostface isn't a real Ghostface. But I think which I think is kind of a bullshit way to answer the question that you have of, well, how the fuck would they know that Sydney was in that bathroom? Dude, I've seen that everywhere.
I have too. But I mean, they've got the exact same boots on.
Yeah, right. I agree.
Come on. It was just it was just bad.
It was just one of those things you decide to, make that leap in logic. Whatever. Who the fuck cares? We're in a meta movie anyway. But I agree with you. I like some of the Mean Girl stuff like you mentioned, but I'm not a big fan of this scene because it doesn't make sense. It kind of would go against these two's MO also, in my opinion, of the way they've done this stuff so far. Kind of broad daylight in a way. I know they had Sydney at her house, but that was kind of an isolated, off or not in her house, but a house, off in the house by herself. Like, this is kind of just an odd placement to me. And again, it doesn't really make sense. And every time I see a bathroom with like these color stalls, I think of the shit scene in American Pie where Finch has to go to the bathroom. So that I just cannot help myself. I'm like, man, I wonder if Finch is in the stall next to her, because Finch would go home to take a shit, but he's not at this. Anyway, sorry, got off on a tangent there. Shout out to American Pie. Stifler's the man. But no, again, this set of scenes I feel like is kind of starting to set up one of my, the third act a little bit, favorite part of the movie. But you do get a little bit of a, not dip, because again, love this fucking movie. But I do think if you cut this scene, nothing is lost. Like, I truly think, you see the boots under the stall and you automatically know what you're in for. But we already got a chase scene with Ghostface and Sydney. We don't need this again right here, in my opinion. So again, not a whole lot on this set of scenes, but I have a ton as the rest of the movie goes. So I'm kind of glad I get to shut up for once.
So it's a great swerve with the call coming to Sydney while Billy is being detained. I thought that was brilliantly done because, of course, we don't know there's two of them just yet. And then you mentioned it. We hear Red Right Hand, iconic, just as crucial to this franchise as the Ghostface mask or Sidney Prescott, in my opinion. Great product placement for the corn checks on the counter while they sit at the breakfast table. Gotta love ads. The side quest with Gail and Sydney talking about the night Maureen died is interesting. Like, it does a good job of planting seeds for the sequel. So I like that, or that they use in the sequel, I guess. And then when Billy is talking to Sydney in the hallway and he says, "See, it couldn't have been me. I was in jail." Like, that's another great subtlety to me. She didn't even notice his lack of shock that the killer called her again. He was just more interested in convincing her that it couldn't have been him. And so when you watch it back after you know the twist, like, that's great, because she should have picked up on that. Mr. Hembry uses the world's largest scissors to cut up the mask. Like, those things were hilariously huge. I fucking love that.
Yes.
Like, I don't know why. I don't think I've ever paid as much attention to those scissors as I did this watch. And it cracked me up, because not only did he cut the fucking mask, he waved them around in the kids' faces. That's funny. The bathroom scene is rough. Not only did she hear these cunts trashing her and her mom, but Ghostface tried to get her again. But hell of a slide under the sink to escape. New meaning to the phrase safe. And then Gail and Dewey flirting. Gail and Dewey flirting was good shit. Like, he's the best. That's a Riz God right there. Take notes. So this is another, I don't have a bad set of scenes. This is a great set of scenes.
Oh, no, there's no, yeah.
All right. Stu tells Sydney, thank you for canceling classes, and there's an impromptu party tonight. She agrees to go, and he tells her to bring food. Principal tries the mask on until he hears a knock at the door. He scares himself with his reflection holding the mask until he hears another knock. He goes to investigate and sees Fred the janitor mopping up in a familiar sweater. He goes back to his office and checks the closet, but no one is there. He closes the office door and Ghostface emerges, stabbing him to death. Tatum asks Sydney what if Cotton was telling the truth. She brings up the rumors of other men with her mother. Sydney says if Cotton is telling the truth, the killer is still out there. Tatum tells her to chill. She sounded like some Wes Carpenter flick. We see Ghostface in the woods and he scurries away. I could have did without that, to be honest. In the video store now, and Stu knocks a handful of videos out of Randy's hands. Stu asks if he's coming to his party now. Billy is flirting with some other girls as Stu defends his actions. Randy says Billy has killer written all over his forehead. Stu asks why would he want to kill his girlfriend as others in the store begin to look on. Randy hopes Sydney will like him now. Stu thinks it's Sydney's father. There's a formula. Everybody's a suspect. Dad is a red herring. Billy is the killer, he says. Billy grabs him and accuses him. Randy admits if this was a scary movie, he'd be the main suspect. Billy walks off menacingly, and Randy asks Stu, you really don't think that's a killer? Red Right Hand plays as we see the town start to lock down for curfew. Sydney asks if Billy will be there tonight. Sydney admits to Tatum she's been holding out sex-wise as we see Ghostface in the glass reflection. Sheriff says the calls have been coming from Neil Prescott, and tomorrow is the anniversary of her death. Bert tells Dewey to stay close to Sydney. Don't let her out his sight. All right, Brian, next set of scenes, what do you think?
So this Principal Henry scene, I noticed, Craven 50 bazillion times as Fred, of course. But you know what I never noticed? The fact that when Winkler opens the closet, his black leather Fonzie jacket from Happy Days is in there. I mean, I'm telling you, this is just, I've seen this movie hundreds of times. It's the movie that never stops giving. And I think it was in Patrick's book or maybe IMDb, but I read it somewhere, where this was another Weinstein thing where he felt like there were too many pages of the script without a kill and asked Williamson to write one in. Williamson agreed happily, though, in this case, because he was apparently having an issue finding a reason to get rid of all of the extra partygoers in the finale. And, this gave him a perfect excuse to use when they all have to leave to go see him hanging from the field goal post. So that was pretty cool. This video store scene, I love so much. I mean, not only is it nostalgia from any time I see a damn scene in a movie with a video store, but there was so much improv from Jamie Kennedy and Matthew Lillard. And, it's serious, but it's also really funny. And it kind of goes back to what Mike was talking about to begin with. And I mean, I could go back to episode 3 and, Drew isn't on the show anymore to defend himself, but I'm going to use him as an example. Like, there are people that like him that say that this movie is a comedy. And yeah, I mean, it's funny in places. It's not played 100% straight like Nightmare was, but it's a sadistic, like sinister funny, like here. Like, it's not like scary movie funny, just my opinion. Something else I think I mentioned in our review of Five Cream, because I refuse to call it Scream, but that movie definitely gives new meaning to this scene right here in the store where you see Billy talking and obviously flirting with those two girls. Like maybe one of them is Sam's mom. I don't know, but this is more depth added to this movie and what was just a throwaway scene 20 years ago that now means something. But Lillard, he's just so good here. Like it's crazy that he just got this role by chance. Fun fact, he was accompanying his then girlfriend to an unrelated audition in the same building. And casting director Elisa Beach saw him in the hallway and asked him to audition for the part. Like, what? Yeah, again, I'm telling you, this movie was just meant to be. It was like the movie God said yes, and it was. But last thing, can we just fucking appreciate the greatness of it? And I guess give the casting department props and the studio for paying who they had to be able to make all of this work. But I mean, Liev Schreiber literally has just like a TV news scene here and is back for the sequels in a larger role. But this line, who will play you in the movie? And she says Tori Spelling, and then they fucking get Tori Spelling to play her in the movie within a movie. Like, bro, like appreciate the greatness here. Go ahead.
Absolutely. You mentioned having to kind of write a kill in here, but I'm glad they did because I think, just killing the teenagers, I think a little on the nose. So having the Fonz die here, which is not something, when you first see him in the movie, you can kind of maybe shoo him away as one of the kills. Cause I mean, it's fucking Henry Winkler. It's the Fonz, man. But I just, when people talk about this movie being a comedy, he kind of overacts his kill a little bit, but it's not so much where I'm like, haha, this is a scary movie. Like he did, it's just, that's Henry Winkler. That's who he is. And so I think I do like the kill. It's way better than what we just, the bathroom scene that we just saw. So I do like that. This scene at the video store is one of my favorites in the whole film because it does a really good job to me of actually making everyone kind of look like a suspect. In hindsight, Billy and Stu look guilty from 1,000 miles away. But something you have to sit and think about if you're watching this with fresh eyes is it's so obvious. You have to think to yourself, are they really going to make these two the killers? Like, they're doing such an obvious job of, like, Matthew Lillard. Yeah, he's funny, but it's kind of a sick funny. Like how Ted Bundy looks to be funny. That's the kind of funny I think that Stu Macher is here. Like, he's kind of, got a sick grin on his face when he's making these jokes. And Billy Loomis is just a fucking psychopath here in his interaction with Randy. And look, so I got something in my throat there. And look, even God damn it. Fuck, man. Shit. Fine. You got me on that one. All right. To backtrack. I think Randy, Jamie Kennedy plays this perfectly because you really do get a sense of, well, the first time you watch it, and actually in 2020, I got to watch it with two people that had never seen it, and they were convinced that Jamie Kennedy was one of the Ghostface because he was the person kind of shoving it in their face, like, could be anybody. Yeah, it could be you, motherfucker, which to me makes sense. But that's why I think he's also a good red herring. I think he's kind of an underrated red herring. Like, you don't want him to be the killer, but it would also be just as obvious as Stu and Billy, in my opinion. But, you talk about the comedy, and I just don't see it that way. If you watch it without the intention of laughing at it, Stu Macher and Billy Loomis are sick fucks. The way they talk in this scene, I mean, they're clearly out of their mind already, and you can just tell. And it is funny you mentioned one of these could be Sam's mom. I think that's a great little nod there because very much so, because they kept adding sequels, the lore grows. I will always love the Tori Spelling line. My wife has never seen Scream 2. So I'm kind of excited because she was like, who the fuck is Tori Spelling? Which made me feel old, by the way. Just throw that out there. She did say that to my face, which made me want to go cry. But now I'm ready to be like, hey, remember that line? That's there. So now you can see how that line pays off. Love this set of scenes. Love the video store scene. Especially, shout out to video stores. I miss you so fucking much.
So, Mr. Hembry trying on the mask, that was a little unnecessary for me. I don't know. And honestly, so was his death. Like, what the hell did he do to deserve it? That makes sense as to why, but still, like, he didn't deserve it, man. He's a good man. Wes Craven playing Janitor Fred in a Freddy Krueger sweater and hat. I didn't really care for that, honestly. Like, it's a little too on the nose for me. I'm fine with Craven having a cameo, but the sweater and hat was too much. How many janitors in schools don't wear... What?
You have bum fuzzled Nico Chin. He couldn't believe it.
I mean, when you go to a school, janitors usually wearing like uniform. Like it's either overalls or coveralls, or it's, a work shirt. They ain't wearing a fucking Freddy Krueger hat and a fedora. Get out of here. And again, I'm a big fan of cameos. Like, Stan Lee made a cameo in every Marvel movie until he died. Awesome. Love it. But I don't know. And then his name's Fred. Moving on. When Henry gets stabbed and falls, we see the great shot of Ghostface in his eye. Like, I thought that was a great shot. The Richard Gere with the gerbil story. For those who don't know, taken to the hospital in 19... Don't do it. This is worth a Google.
Yes,
He had to
it
be taken
is.
to the hospital in 1974 to have a gerbil removed from his ass. Legend has it that was a rumor started by Sylvester Stallone after they got into a little bit of a disagreement on set.
Gere put a gerbil
But-
up his ass, man.
But it's funny. It's funny that she's like,
No.
they mentioned the Richard Gere gerbil story in this movie. So, if you didn't catch it, I'm here. This is an educational podcast.
Oh, appreciate
I love the
that.
back and forth with Stu and Randy at the movie store. That's just great dialogue. And it gives us the rule. Everyone's a suspect. Like, yeah, the guy he's telling this to is the suspect, and he's the culprit. Absolutely perfect that Sydney says, with my luck, they cast Tori Spelling when Spelling was originally supposed to play Sydney, and then she's cast in Scream 2 in the Stab remake, or in the Stab adaptation. I thought that was awesome. I love that Dewey's eating ice cream now. Like, it's so hard to be serious and have a meaningful conversation when a grown man is eating a strawberry ice cream cone. Like, the ice cream cone is just hilarious. Like, it fits Dewey's character so perfectly, and another entertaining set of scenes.
Well, hey, and you talk about that ice cream cone scene. That's a whole red herring we never talked about either. I mean, because it shows the sheriff's shoes and definitely implies or hopes to imply to you that he might be a suspect, because that's the same exact shoes as they've been having on. And I wanted to say too, Nico, I completely agree with you. Like, when it showed Ghostface even in the grocery store, I was like, come the fuck on. Like, come on, you didn't.
Yeah. I think the grocery store scene's it's forced, but it's just more dialogue for Tatum and Sydney.
Well, and that's fine. Just don't show Ghostface in the fucking grocery
Yeah, what the fuck's he doing in the grocery store?
Two things quickly. As much as I love the Scary Movie franchise, fuck them for ruining this ice cream scene for me, because the way that Doofy eats the ice cream, it just kills this scene for me. Like, that's all I can think of, which is unfortunate, because David Arquette does a great job of still being kind of serious while holding this fucking ice cream cone, but they ruin it with Deputy Doofy in Scary Movie. I thought that I just can't help it. And second thing is, more unnecessary mask put on. The Fonz or Sartain from Halloween 2018? Who did it way more unnecessarily?
Fonz. All right. Dewey drops Sydney and Tatum off at Stu's house. The vibes are immaculate as folks are funneling beers. Gail and her news van arrive on scene. She tells Kenny get the camera as Dewey scares her. He tells her he's going to check the party out, and Gail asks to join. She grabs her coat and camera. Randy tells Sydney Jamie Lee is a scream queen. That's why she's in all those movies. Stu asks Tatum to get some beer, and he announces Gail is here. Tatum asks for Dewey to come over and asks why is she here. Sydney asks if they found her dad as Gail plants the camera. Tatum goes into the seemingly freezing cold garage to get beers. She grabs a few bottles as we see the door close. She realizes the door's locked and the light goes out. She raises the garage door, but it goes back down. Ghostface blocks the door. She thinks it's a joke. She asks if it's Randy and if she can be the helpless victim. He pulls a knife out and cuts her arm. She hits him with the freezer door, then throws beer bottles, hitting him in the stomach and head. She tries crawling out the, cat door, but gets stuck and she's killed as the door is lifted and her neck is snapped. Ghostface leaves her hanging and leaves the garage. Billy jump scares Sydney trying to leave, and Stu says for he and Sydney to go talk up in his parents' bedroom. Randy asks what's he doing here, and his chance with Sydney is over. Kenny gets the feed going as Gail joins him in the van. They have a 30-second delay. Billy and Sydney talk, and he apologizes for being selfish. She says she's been selfish and self-absorbed. She says she can't wallow in grief forever. Billy caresses her face, and they kiss passionately. She says she wants to be a porno movie, and Billy is caught off guard. They kiss again and get intimate. All right, Brian, next set of scenes, what do you think?
Nico brought up what I thought was a good point. I'm pretty sure the last time we did this episode with Dewey, as he said, honestly, what the fuck is Dewey doing dropping off these girls at this party with a killer on the loose? But now I kind of see it like he's dropping them off so they can have fun, but he's also sticking around to survey the place and keep an eye on them as well. As, he just had that conversation with the sheriff, so it tracks. Which brings us to the garage door kill. I mean, it's definitely Billy here for sure. Nico, I don't understand why you said it was cold in the garage. Did you have a reason for saying it was cold in the garage? I'm just
Her
wondering.
nipples were rock hard.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I said bird. Oh, never mind.
I didn't notice.
What the fuck is going on? The logistics are pretty dumb. Like, no way a garage door is holding that kind of weight. And the choreography with the fight does leave, a lot to be desired, but it is definitely unique. I'll give it that. I mean, it's memorable with the effects. Speaking of that, shout out to the legendary Bob Kurtzman and Greg Nicotero. The effects on Casey, her boyfriend, and Tatum are really damn good, I think. Which I think are the three biggest makeup effects undertakings in this entire movie, and I think they did a really good job. If you see them up close, in 4K, they don't look all that great, but that's all the behind the scenes stuff. I mean, because Craven shot them in a way where they look real to me. Anyway, the rest of this is just really damn good scene between Nev and Skeet. I mean, the writing is fantastic with the Silence of the Lambs reference and all the meta. But this is real life. This isn't a movie. Yes, it is. Life is all just one great big movie where you pick your genre. Shit, I love it. I've tried to use that quote so many times in my life and it never works. We've got about 45 minutes, believe it or not. This kind of blew me away a little bit when I looked at this because we've got about 45 minutes left of this movie. And the rest of it's taking place at Stu's. I guess in my mind, again, you remember things differently. I don't know, but I'm always like, okay, the third act is when we get to Stu's house. But maybe not, because, a 2-hour movie and you're at Stu's already. Like I said, and the pacing in this movie is fantastic. I mean, I don't feel this runtime at all.
Here we are. We're at 261 Turner Lane. Probably some of my favorite stuff in the movie, outside the opening, obviously, which I think is the best ever. But man, iconic location, iconic horror movie location. I think it's up there with the Norman Bates house, Bates Motel, all that stuff. I think just a very the Elm Street house, the Laurie Strode's, all of that. I think it's very up there. This Stu Macher's house. Here we go, and it's been used now in multiple different Scream sequels for good reason. This is just where the movie really, really picks up. It's funny you mentioned Nico saying that because I have that as well. I have the fact that Nico called Dewey out for you're supposed to be a good cop. Why the fuck would you do this? That's fair. But like Brian said, I think it was to be a little bit more, well, they're all in one place, so I think it'll be okay. But I love this scene mostly because high school house parties were fun as fuck, man. Sneaking beer, no parents home, probably breaking someone's shit you shouldn't have been breaking, having to answer for that on Monday morning when the parents come back home. Just that kind of high school party scene. Blast from the Past had a lot of nostalgia for that. I will say, and I criticized it in our first episode too, this is still my least favorite kill. I try to be a little more lenient towards it as time goes on, but man, the choreography here between Ghostface and Tatum is bad. It's clumsy as shit. It's goofy. It's kind of where I think people can rightly poke fun at some of the stuff in this movie. They probably used this scene. I will say this is the first time that I recall really noticing in this scene, because again, high def, Blu-ray, all that stuff, but the sparkliness to the Ghostface outfit, you can kind of see it more in this. It's not just that plain black robe there. There's a little sparkle to it, which I thought was interesting. And this garage door kill is just so illogical. It would never work. The motor would blow, the door would go down, and Tatum could also fit through it. I know she had some big old knockers, okay? But she can fit through that fucking door, okay? So I don't know. I'm not buying it. It's not bad. It's just the one small critique I have of this movie is that whole scene right there. But I like how they tip their cap to it in Scream 5, with getting the beer, they're kind of playful, same garage, all that stuff. So I thought that was nice in Scream 5, but here it just doesn't work for me. Finally, we get some sexy time between Sydney and almost called him Stu, Sydney and Billy. Look, I love the dialogue here because of the same thing I mentioned in the video store. As nice as this is, I'm not pulling for Billy Loomis already. He's shown he's an ass. He treats her like shit. But she's still giving in to him, which is so uncharacteristic of Sydney. She kind of caved in to a little bit of peer pressure here. And he's sick and sadistic with his line delivery. When you go back and watch it, knowing he's one of the killers, the stuff he says, he's demented, torment, he's got some serious fucking issues. And I think as Sydney starts to put this all together, again, I'll say that for the rest. But again, love this set of scenes. I think the house party stuff starts to pick up. And you mentioned kind of the runtime. To me, as soon as we get to Stu's house, it is the third act. I know it's not technically the third act because I do think that happens once Billy is quote unquote stabbed. But I do think right here is really just this is where the end of the movie, and it's a big chunk, and I'm sure somebody has this in their fun facts, but I do like that this was all shot at one time, one long ass scene they all shot together that took them over the course of, days or whatever. And then they made shirts that said, "I survived scene 118. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, 21 days to be exact. That is crazy. Tatum calling Gail media muff, that's just a great burn. Like, that got a laugh out of me. And
I've seen this movie like hundreds of times, and just until just then forgot that she even said that.
I only noticed this because I watched it this time with subtitles because I didn't want to miss anything. And nice. She definitely called her. She said, "Take your media muff somewhere else," or something like that.
That's
and
awesome.
I meant to mention this earlier when we met Tatum, but Brian, you mentioned how Drew Barrymore bought her own clothing for the movie. Well, so did Rose McGowan. Like, they originally wanted her to be more of a tomboy, and she wasn't having it, so she went out and bought her own wardrobe. So that's crazy. The garage scene with Tatum. Yeah. Mike, you said you didn't hate it. It's just a nitpick. I don't like it. While I love that she nails Scareface in the nuts with a beer bottle.
Scareface.
Throwback. I did that on purpose.
I know.
Being stuck in the doggy door is terrible. That garage door wouldn't have done that. First of all, it would have stopped when it was jammed and went back down. If it could even lift her in the first place. I know she's not a large lady, but how strong is that damn garage door motor? I'm just not buying it. I don't like that scene. I don't like that death at all. And then when Billy's upstairs with Sydney, he said, "I'm sorry, I've been selfish." When to Sid's knowledge, he was innocent. Like, she owes him an apology. Billy knows what he's doing. Play to her emotions, grease the cheeks, and it worked. Take notes, kids. But
I don't know. This is a sick son of a bitch.
Well, don't take notes from the rest of the shit he does, but just, when you're in a situation with your old lady, just say sorry even when you did nothing wrong. It works a lot of the time. But another thing that annoys me, and I've pointed this out before, and again, just like earlier, this is not exclusive to this movie. You see how small that damn bed was? And this was supposed to be the parents' bedroom. Why can't they properly stage a fucking bedroom in movies? Like, God, that drives me crazy. That was like a damn twin bed that his parents sleep in.
You have brought that up a lot.
It drives me crazy, man. Like, we're supposed to put ourselves in this and like get lost in this world like it's real when they fucking two grown-ass adults are sleeping in a bed that a toddler would sleep in. I'm not buying it. But, I don't hate this set of scenes, but if I had to say a set of scenes was my least favorite, it'd probably be this one just because that fucking garage door drives me up a wall. Unlike, I guess similar to the way it drove her up. I don't know.
Randy and some others are watching Halloween now. Speaking of Halloween, it's next week's review. Randy and some others are watching Halloween now as Stu says he wants to see Jamie Lee's breast. Randy explains the rules now. Number 1, you can never have sex. Number 2, you can never drink or do drugs. Number 3, never, ever, under any circumstance, say, "You'll be right back." Dewey asks Gail to join him. Sheriff alerted him of an abandoned car found down the road. Some kids leave asking, "Where's Tatum?" She probably got pissed at me and bailed. The phone rings and Randy answers. "Holy shit," he says. He tells the other guys Principal Hembry was killed and hung from the goalpost. The others leave immediately, and Randy keeps watching Halloween. Gail and Dewey are walking and chatting as they jump out the road as the cars almost hit them. Dewey lands on top of Gail and she kisses him. He apologizes, saying he's on duty. Gail sees the abandoned car saying it's Neil Prescott's, and they run back to the house. Billy asks Sydney if she's okay after their sex session. She asks who he called in jail. He says he called his dad, but Sydney calls him out on that. He asks if she still thinks it was him. She says no, and he asks, "What do I have to do to prove I'm not a killer?" She's scared as Ghostface enters and stabs Billy repeatedly. She runs out the room and hits Ghostface with a door. She barricades the door and bangs on the window, yelling for help to no success. She gets on the roof and almost falls. Ghostface grabs her and she jumps off and lands on a boat. She doesn't see Ghostface anymore but sees Tatum's dead body hanging in the garage door. Randy is watching Halloween still as Ghostface walks up behind him. He goes to stab Randy until he hears Sydney scream. She bangs on the van door and Kenny lets her in. He turns around and has his throat slit. Sydney slams the door shut and crawls out the back of the van. Dewey has Gail call the cops from the van and he goes in the house calling for Mr. Prescott. Gail tells Kenny she needs the cellular, but can't find them until she sees blood all over the ground. She calls 911 until Randy scares her, and she punches him with a phone. She drives off, and Kenny's body is on the windshield now. She throws his body off, and she swerves off the road, hitting a tree after seeing Sydney. All right, Brian, go ahead. It's the next set.
So right off the bat, we get the rules from Randy, and how fucking legendary is this scene? I mean, people who haven't even seen Scream know about the rules. And I mean, speaking of shit I guess I never heard or paid attention to, she didn't show her tits until she went legits. I died laughing. Like, I completely forgot he said that.
One of my favorite lines.
Completely
Absolutely.
forgot he said that. I wonder if that was a Kennedy ad lib or if that was written. I don't know. I love this damn movie. But anyway, just think, in 96, like, we are watching someone in a movie not watch a monster movie from the 30s or the 50s like usual. No, I mean, we're watching them watch Halloween, and we get before now, unwritten rules for the surviving a horror movie that had become such a trope over the 80s and early 90s. But they're now written, and we're hearing us basically on the big screen. I mean, we're hearing our voice as the fans and a character saying what we've always thought. I mean, that was incredible at the time, at least for me. As a huge horror fan and a teenager watching this movie, I didn't know what the word meta was back then. All I knew was that it was fucking awesome and that it was groundbreaking. I just didn't know how much. I mean, until 20 plus years later. Also, I'll admit in the past, I actually always thought, like, how do all these people that parked in the front yard and like just they're leaving, how do they not see Tatum clearly stuck in the garage, like dead? Like, based on the layout of the house, does that make sense? I don't know. I've got to be missing something, but I always just blew it off to like a movie goof. But if you go look at the layout of the Mocker house, like I did, don't judge me, only the highest level of research here on the show, the garage is in the back of the house for some ungodly reason. So there you have it. If you were wondering, like I was, it's not in the fucking front yard. Anyway, the action gets kicked off, the rest of the set of scenes. By the way, let's kind of be real. If Sydney fell like that out of the top story window and like fell in the boat, she dead, like real dead. Not real sure what kind of, flat boat the fucking Mocker family has with cushion, mind you, but man, I don't know, whatever. Horror movie trope, just nitpick. And the scene with Randy on the couch talking to Jamie, love the meta there. But also, this is the only scene in the movie where the person in the costume is actually one of the actors. It was Skeet Ulrich and not one of the stuntmen. So Ulrich specifically requested it, apparently, and this is where it happens. This is where the magic happens.
That's right. Magic of movie making, man. To quote Walt Disney. Anyway, look, this is an iconic scene. It's been recreated. Other movies have been recreated in other Screams. And I just love it. Like you said, this is the voice of the people, coming out through Randy here. This is us. This is, like I said, Randy is us. And it comes through in this scene, the rules of a slasher movie, a horror movie. He talks about it right here. And this is now in the pop culture consciousness. Like, when people think about slashers, they think about this scene too. Like, everything Randy is saying is true. And they are setting up to break those tropes in this movie. Can't have sex. Well, Sydney just had sex. Can't drink. Well, people that end up living, they had alcohol, including Randy. So again, we're setting stuff up to break the tropes. But I do like the fact that this quote unquote rules of surviving a horror movie lives on. It is pop culture, and I love that. And Dustin said something that I wholeheartedly agree with earlier. This franchise recognizing other things that exist outside of its own little universe is why I love it so much. We're not ignoring the fact that Halloween exists, that Freddy Krueger exists. Like, we are acknowledging horror movies exist, and they're, at this point in time in 1996 or 5, whenever it was filmed, it's slasher movies had kind of gone the way of the dodo in a sense. And so to bring them back with such a breath of fresh air, I just love it. I can't say enough about this set of scenes. And I like this interaction with Sydney and Billy right here as well. I kind of touched on it a little bit in my last thing, but I like that Sydney, while giving in, is still kind of, for some reason, still pretty suspect of Billy in his motivations here. And I think this is where you can kind of start to see Billy not be able to hold it in for much longer. And I know he's about to go through this fake kill, and this fake stab and everything. Spoiler alert, if you haven't seen the movie, that's not my fault. But he's about to go through this whole elaborate thing with the corn syrup, but he's starting to unravel a little bit, little by little. I think it's played really well by Skeet Ulrich. He just can't help himself. He's ready to reveal who he is to Sydney, even in this set of scenes, like just this over dramatic. What do I have to do to prove it to you? Like just and this overacting when he's quote unquote killed. I fucking love it. I think it's intentional, very sadistic, and I love it. Here we are. We get really where the action starts to get kicked up. Obviously, you get Kenny the cameraman dead. Shout out to Kenny. He's a great character actor in a lot of stuff. But in this movie, he's pretty memorable to me. And again, throat slash. So I'm always a fan of that. I'm not a big fan of Sydney falling into this boat or whatever. Like you said, dead, DOA, dead on arrival, definitely. But again, to me, not a whole lot more. Just the fact that the action gets kicked up here. This is where we start to get kills instead of bills. That's a Destiny Child reference anyway. Love this set of scenes, one of my favorites, and we're about to start my second favorite part of the movie outside of the open.
You just give a Destiny Child reference. I guess he's just going to talk.
Oh, sorry, I was muted. What I meant to tell you was that yes, I did, and I know you can pay my bills because you're rich as fuck, Brian. Anyway, go ahead.
What the fuck is happening? Go ahead, Dustin.
It gets exhausting listening to fucking Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk argue about money on this show.
What the fuck?
All right, Bill Gates. Fuck off.
That's Nico. When Randy's giving his rule speech, he says, push the rules, you end up dead. I think that's great foreshadowing for Stu. Like, even though he's in on it, he's not above the rules. And so I like how that was added there. Dewey, man, my man Dewey is doing work outside with Gail. Smooth as a buttered roll from Texas Roadhouse here. It worked, too, in real life. I mean, they met on this set and ended up getting married. So shout out to David Arquette, the GOAT. Great editing of, look, here comes the obligatory tit shot, and then cutting to Sid in the bedroom, taking off her shirt. That was good editing. The kids running Dewey off the road. Jesus, man. No respect for law enforcement in this town. Unbelievable. But it did them a favor. They would have never found the car otherwise, so that's cool. Sydney putting the pieces together about Billy's lies is a great moment, and the score really helps tremendously set the tone. We get a great setup from Billy and Stu in the bedroom. Billy's, stab Billy and make Sydney and us, the viewer, think that he was innocent this whole time. He was just kind of a creepy character. So I like that little diversion there. Crazy that the window wouldn't open at first, but she tried again and it opened no problem. And by crazy, I mean stupid. I get building tension, but that just doesn't make sense to me. Like she tried to pull it one time, turned around, freaked out for a few seconds, a waste of time, and then opened it with no problem. Okay. You mentioned Randy saying behind you, Jamie, while watching Halloween. That was great. Of course, Jamie Kennedy's his real name. That was an awesome moment for the viewer. I was going to say huge missed opportunity by Gail to say, oh my God, they killed Kenny when his body falls onto the windshield. But South Park didn't come out until the next year. Yeah, I looked that up when I was doing my notes for this. I was like, man, that's a missed opportunity. But I guess this came out a year before South Park was a thing, so she wouldn't have known. So never mind.
Man, that would have been a crazy prediction to come. That would have been nuts.
It would have. That would have been awesome. But, also, I mean, she was calling him such a fat ass earlier. I think she would have noticed, hey, this van's running a little heavy up top, a little top heavy. I don't know. Is the body up
this
there?
This dude put on 20 pounds to play the role, too. So he would be more fat for the jokes. That's some dedication.
That's commitment. But, I mean, this is a great set of scenes to set us up for the finale. Well, I guess almost set us up for the finale.
All right, Sydney is back at the house yelling for Dewey. He falls to the ground with a knife in his back. Ghostface emerges and she gets in the cop car. She locks him out, but no keys. Ghostface has them and disappears. Sydney holds both doors locked until we see the trunk open. She radios for 911, but Ghostface grabs her. She gets free and runs to the house. She takes Dewey's gun as Stu and Randy accuse each other of being the killer. She shuts the door on them, locking them both out. Billy stumbles out the room, tumbling down the stairs. She helps him up and he asks for the gun, saying it's okay. He opens the door and Randy barges in. Billy says, we all go a little mad sometimes, and shoots Randy in the shoulder. Billy reveals the blood is fake and Stu appears, revealing he's a killer as well. Sydney tells them they'll never get away with it, and they reveal they set up Cotton Weary. Billy doesn't like motives, saying it's a lot scarier without one. They killed her mom because she was a whore. Her mom was fucking Billy's dad, and that's why his mom left. Stu says they have a surprise for you, Sydney. He brings her dad out, and Stu plants the phone and voice changer in his pocket. Billy tells Sydney their master plan, and he stabs Stu. Stu stabs Billy now. Stu is stabbed again. I'm feeling a little woozy here, he yells. Billy has Stu go get the gun, and he's going to untie Pops. But Stu notices the gun is gone. All right, Brian, that's the next set of scenes I got, and the next set is the ending. Go ahead.
Man, the big reveal here. I mean, just so well done. I mean, when you're watching this the first time, which obviously I haven't done in 20 plus years, and it's funny you mentioned that with Kat, Mike. But I also had that opportunity recently of watching my son's reaction to seeing it the first time. And when Randy and Stu are both pointing fingers at each other, and then Billy comes down the stairs, you have this moment where you're either saying to yourself or saying out loud, who the fuck is the killer here? I mean, it's such a great, 45 seconds to a minute of just pure frustration before Billy turns his head and gives that psycho line. And while this is just master class, the back and forth between Stu and Billy is almost even better. I mean, like, especially knowing that most of it was ad-libbed by Lillard, all the best shit. I mean, feeling a little woozy here, and Houston, we have a problem. I mean, it's just, the rest of the ad-libbing is in the next set of scenes. I mean, I'm sure we're going to touch on it, but this set of scenes is just so fantastic. It's hard to even take notes on, even if it's the 300 millionth time that I've watched this movie. I'm still like glued to the TV watching like I don't even know what's going to happen yet. I love that, again, not in 5 Cream, but I do love that we get like an almost Dewey death in every Scream. I like how that became a trope too. Like, somehow, some way, Dewey makes it through this shit. I kind of miss that. As rite of a passage as I think Dewey's death was eventually, like, I don't know, man. I do love that we get one of those here, but you talked about it, man. The suspense. We've had some jokes, some jokes, some ha-ha stuff here, but when push comes to shove, this is tense right here, where Sydney's at the door and Stu and Randy are pointing fingers at each other, and she can't decide, so she shuts the fucking door on both of them. I love that. And then you get Billy right here, which, again, when you watch it with the benefit of knowing who the killers are, you get to see these faces that Billy makes the entire time that makes him look like a guilty-ass psychopath. But here, when he turns that switch on, and it's just so great to me. The nod to Psycho, we all go a little mad sometimes. Again, a movie that the smart ones on the show appreciate. Great line, great placement of the line. Love that. And I love Billy and Stu as a tandem, man. It's, all jokes aside, I don't actually want Stu Macher to be alive. That's just something I like to make Brian mad with. And I know seeing it on the big screen may have Nico get up and walk out of the theater if it happens. But I do love the character of Stu, and to see him return would pop me like a nostalgia thing. Not for any like story reason, like it does not make sense, but it would get a good laugh out of me because I just love the character. I think it's great, and all the ad-libbing that Matthew Lillard does is just iconic. Feeling a little woozy here, man. Shout out to the last set of scenes actually where I say I'll be right back, just like him all the fucking time. Still to this day, that's exactly how I say it. So Matthew Lillard has so many great one-liners, and in the next set of scenes as well. But I do think having that intention of making Billy look so obvious that he can't be the killer because it's too big of a red herring, and then actually making him the killer. I talked about it in 5 Cream. I liked that, where clearly, the boyfriend was the killer, and you should have known it the whole time. But you're thinking to yourself, they're not going to make it this guy, not the boyfriend again. That's too obvious, too on the nose. It's got to be somebody else. Nope, it's him. Same thing in this first one. I think, having all these different red herrings, putting a little sprinkle that it could be Randy. I love this reveal. I thought it was done really, really well.
My man Dewey getting stabbed. It's brutal on the surface, but it's a false alarm. Thank God. Also, I want to point out that David Arquette and Sid Vicious, 2 men who had survived being stabbed and go on to win the WCW title. Sid Vicious was stabbed by Arn Anderson in 1993. So, fun fact.
Fantastic. That is fantastic. Great job. I love how someone had the scissor sign at the show. Remember that?
Yeah.
For Sid.
Shout out to pro wrestling. Anyway, terrible peripheral vision by Sydney to not see the back hatch lift up on the car. Like, it happened directly to her left. It's not even like she was looking forward and she was looking to the driver's side window. She should have seen that. Anyway, Billy falls down the stairs and Sydney yells, "You're bleeding." No shit, Sid. Like, he's fucking covered in it. God, that irritated me. Women. The reveal that it's Billy and Stu, both, that was very well done. Seeing those two idiots stab each other after laying out their plan was entertaining until he said, "I'm feeling a little woozy here." That's cheesy even by Stu standards, man. I got to nitpick that. I don't like that line. I don't like that line.
Even I like that shit now. Come on.
It's just a little too, when you've got Parmesan, mozzarella, cheddar, do you really need to add some Munster cheese on top of it? It's just too much cheese. So
he sounds like Shaggy a lot in that scene too.
Yeah.
Here, man.
He does.
All right, guys, here's the ending. Gail has a gun and tells her ending now. Billy takes the gun and kicks her in the chest. Sydney is gone now. Stu says he's hurting, and Billy answers the phone. Sydney reveals she called the cops, and Stu has the phone now. He thinks he's dying and says peer pressure was his motive. Billy hits him with a phone, and Stu cries, saying his mom and dad are going to be so mad at him. Sydney jumps out from the closet, stabbing Billy with an umbrella. She grabs and tosses the gun, and Stu tackles her. He punches her, and they fall over the couch. She bites him and hits him with a vase, then pushes the TV on his head, and it electrocutes him. Randy scares Sydney and says he should be dead. Billy punches Randy and gets on top of Sydney. She grabs his knife wound and Gail shoots him. Randy says this is where the dead killer comes back for one last scare. Billy sits up and Sydney shoots him in the head immediately. Neil Prescott Kool-Aid mans through the door as we see Dewey taken away in an ambulance. Gail reports on this amazing breaking story on the mass killings at Stu's house. The camera pans away as the film ends. All right, Brian, what'd you think about the ending to your favorite horror movie?
Fucking amazing. Lillard saying, "You fucking hit me with the phone, dick," was another improvised line. I love that. And my mom and dad are be so mad at me. Just another one. Like both. I mean, Lillard's a fucking genius. Another little fun fact there. When Sydney actually stabbed Billy with the umbrella, it apparently missed his protective vest and legit stabbed him. So that's crazy. But I mean, and I don't really have much on here. I'm maybe not the biggest fan of the TV kill, but yeah, that motherfucker is dead, Mike. Anyway, so now I do love the double tap on Billy, but Randy saying be careful, this is where the killer comes back. That to me, I don't really care for. I never have. It's just a little bit too far to me. Otherwise, great ending to a great movie. I'll leave the Dewey fun fact for Dustin, or I'll say it if he doesn't. But yeah, fantastic.
Again, fantastic ending. And I really, again, going back to something I said a couple sets of scenes ago here, I think Gail is such an integral part of this first movie. I know as the franchise goes on, maybe you could do without her, but here, I think she plays such an important role, a vital role, just opposite of these teenagers. Here she is kind of to, quote unquote, help Sydney save the day, which we continue to get throughout the franchise. And I like I like that continuity of those two coming together, starting out as mortal enemies. I think that kind of works for me. And I like this chase scene, and I like everything with, Stu and Billy here in the kitchen. I'm not going to recite the same lines Brian did because that's beating a dead horse, but iconic stuff from Lillard. Hit me with a phone, dick is great. Anyway, I get a kick out of this like reversal here with Sydney where now she's chasing them. Like, I think that's great. I really do enjoy that. And I'm with you. The only other nitpick I have outside of the Tatum kill is this right here where she shoots Billy in the head after Randy's line. I'm not a big fan of that. I think, we kind of get that throughout the rest of the franchise too, unfortunately, especially in Five Cream. They overdo it there. And here, I think it kind of started that trope within this franchise that I'm just not a big fan of. But hey, outside of that, great ending, great song at the end, all of it, all was well and good. All my favorites survived. I love how they carry out Dewey on the stretcher, and he just kind of gives a thumbs up. Love it. Love everything about it except that one little line from Randy.
Now, why did Gail have the gun that whole time and was just watching this shit from around the corner? That was risky. Sid and her dad could have both been killed at any second. Not upset that she got Spartan kicked out the front door, to be honest with you. And Brian, I believe the fun fact that you were saving for me was that Dewey was originally dead. He wasn't supposed to survive this, but the decision was made after the fact to have him survive and live so they could use him in, sequels. And yeah, good call. Right call was made. Can't say the same for Five Cream. I mean, damn, they could have left that door open, but anyway.
Somebody impactful had to die. Anyway.
Should have been Gail. Anyway, sorry. Let me calm down. Funniest part of the movie, the funniest part of the entire movie is Billy throwing the phone and hitting Stu. Like, I had to pause it because I was laughing so damn hard. And apparently that was an accident, not scripted. So I'm glad Craven left it in. Pause. Like, that shit was fucking hilarious. He just slammed it on him. I love the quote, "in your dreams," right before the TV death. That was a great nod to Freddy. As if the TV death wasn't already a nod and tribute, but "in your dreams" is a great line there. Great last scare after Randy called it. This is usually when they sit up. They cut out an original line from the original script, which you can view online, which Sidney was pointing a gun at Billy's head, shooting him and saying, "That's for having an itty bitty little weenie."
I'm glad they cut that.
I'm glad they cut that one.
I'm glad they cut that too. But if I'm Billy, before she pulls the trigger, my last words are "still hit" though. But anyway,
Facts.
This is a very solid ending. Great movie. Really enjoyed it. Like, it's just it does everything right, and even the nitpicks that I had throughout, just I loved them. Now, I will say, you mentioned the double tap, and the double tap is what I originally had in my notes. Like, she gave him a double tap, or I did say that she gave him a double tap. That made me think and made me realize we haven't done Zombieland. We are failing. We got to do Zombieland. That's such a good movie.
Definitely.
Anyway.
I love that movie.
I mean, it's your theme next month. It's possible. Just laying it, just throwing it out there.
That theme's already determined.
You could let us watch something good, but you won't. Anyway.
Oh, you're going to watch something.
I'll jump into social media. We'll do Instagram first. Jesse Kraft commented, "Another one I am fortunate to say I saw in the theaters. It was magical. I probably rewatch it 3-4 times a year. How often do you guys rewatch the original Scream?" I'll be honest, I probably watch it once a year.
Yeah, I wouldn't even put it at once a year. Not often enough for me.
2 or 3 times a year, probably.
That's a lot. That seems like a lot.
No, I know it does, but it's a comfort movie for me too, man. This and Scream 4, I could turn on anytime.
Probably once a year for me, but honestly, I'm gonna remedy that. Like, I did a Scream rewatch, the complete saga, after I saw Scream 6 this year, and then watching again for doing my notes. It's just, God, so fun. I'm gonna up this.
Big
All right,
facts.
Gourmet Goes Keto said, "If you had to recast Sidney, Gale, and Dewey, who would you pick?" And he said, "It's okay to not answer for all three. I'm not recasting any of them. They're perfect."
No.
Same.
Although Brad Pitt in all 3 roles would have been great.
What is happening?
Dewey and Sidney are the only irreplaceable casting. I mean, I could do without Courtney Cox.
Come
Oh
on.
my God, she's great as Gale.
Who would you put as Gale?
Someone that's not going to break David Arquette's heart in real life.
Oh.
How do you know that's how? That was a mutual parting of the ways, pal.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Yo,
Still hit though. Anywho, let's go over to Twitter now. That guy commented, "Still remember seeing this in the theater. Completely tipped the horror genre on its axis with the best opening sequence of all time. Big name actor acts in the open scene, made you feel nobody was safe. Great show, brothers." Hey, I appreciate that. I appreciate the comment.
I'm so
Yeah.
jealous of all these people that have seen it in the theater, like the first
Yeah.
one. I'm so jealous of that.
Sean Irwin commented, "This movie is still so good. Cannot wait to hear y'all's better discussion on it." Hey, we can't wait to hear our better discussion
I'll
too.
say a word. Throw that first one in the trash, pal.
All right, Go Dogs. Randy Smith coming 10 out of 10. Can't wait to hear y'all's take again on this classic. I'll never forget my 10th birthday party and watching this for the first time. Maybe the only franchise that doesn't have a completely bad movie. 6 is the worst, but still enjoyable.
whoa!
Negative.
Hey,
That's crazy. Crazy.
No,
Because
I
in
wanna
this
point
house,
out-
6 is the best. Oh, sorry.
I mean, it's damn good, man. It's damn good. But I want to point out something that Randy and I, we had a little back and forth on X, the app formerly known as Twitter. The Scream official Twitter account tweeted, "You're next." That's all it said. "You're next." And I said, confirmed, Goldberg is the next. Goldberg is the next Ghostface. And of course, Randy liked that. He said, "The dog, you got to watch out for them dogs." So yeah, that was fun.
That's true.
That's the former Georgia Bulldog, Bill Goldberg, and Bret Hart's arch nemesis.
Randy Smith did say prayers for the GOAT, Brock Bowers. Go Dogs.
Yeah, prayers for Brock Bowers. He'll be back against Florida. Go Dogs.
All right. Andrew Ferguson commented, instead of trying to escape through a doggy door, Tatum should have just blinded Ghostface with her high beams.
I think she did. She about did.
That's a good
Nice.
one. All right, we'll do Facebook now. Jennifer Tyree comments, Stu and Billy could kill me anytime with a bunch of provocative emojis. This movie started my horror movie obsession, and I'll watch it when I need to relax. This is definitely a good comfort horror movie. Joe Swinford commented, a movie that definitely changed the game. R.I.P. Wes. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Shout out to Wes.
Abby Renee commented, this movie started a franchise that I will always love. I now get to share it with my kids, and that makes it even more special. My son is even going as Ghostface for Halloween this year. This one is definitely the best in the franchise. I have several favorite lines from this movie. Do any of you have a favorite quote?
Hit me with a phone, Dick is really fucking great, man. I can't help it.
I got to go with Media Muff, man. That shit was hilarious to me.
That's a fantastic line.
I got three favorite lines that I'll go with. Number one is Randy's, everybody's a suspect. Love that delivery. Matthew Lillard's, I'm feeling a little woozy here. I like that one. And then I really love Skeet Ulrich when he goes, we all go mad a little, or we all go a little mad something. It's a great reveal. I love it. Those are my three favorite.
But I mean, it changes throughout the years. But my new favorite one is she didn't know her tits or she didn't show her tits until she went legit. That's my new favorite one.
Fantastic.
And I feel like we all got to agree. Roger L. Jackson.
Oh yeah.
What's your favorite scary movie?
Oh,
amazing.
Oh, yeah.
Good shit.
Absolutely.
Got
And
You
the
Like
last
a
comment
Fish
we
is
have
pretty good too.
It is very good.
I say that a lot too. Got you like a fish.
And the last comment we have is from Michelle Mirza, big fan of the show. I was lucky enough to see this in the theater when it came out. Sorry, Michelle, that mean to you. I remember being blown away at the ending. A total game changer. All right, Brian, Dustin, y'all got any fun facts?
I got a laundry list, so just bear with me. By my count, there's 36 different horror references in this movie. 36 different movies or characters. That's a lot.
Are you going to say them all? Because I was kind of hoping you would.
Fuck no, dude.
Aw.
At my advanced age, I'll fall asleep halfway through reading the list. The high school scenes were originally going to be shot at Santa Rosa High School in California. However, very close to the shooting date, the school board read the script and denied the film to be shot there due to the violent nature. As payback, director Wes Craven put in the end credits under the special thanks section, in all caps, no thanks whatsoever to the Santa Rosa City School District Governing Board. That's my kind of petty.
Fucking fantastic.
Yeah, I love it. Plus, I just would like to interject here. I hate Santa Rosa, California, because I live in Santa Rosa County, Florida, and that shit, I have a vendetta against them because it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare. Everybody thinks they're calling Santa Rosa, California for everything. I just want you to know I have a vendetta against you, Santa Rosa County.
The beef of the Santa Rosas.
I hate you.
Area codes be damned. Yeah, who would have thought that calling 850 was not in fucking California? Anyway. Being a favorite of screenwriter Kevin Williamson, Molly Ringwald was offered the role of Sidney Prescott, but turned it down, saying that she'd rather not be playing a high school student at the age of 27. Joke's on you, Molly. This could have done wonders for your career because I can't think of shit else she's done since then. On the directors in 2007, David Arquette revealed that he presumptuously turned down the role of Billy in favor of playing Dewey, which was originally written as a hunky leading man part. All right. Freddie Prinze Jr. auditioned for the role of Stu. That would have been interesting, and he didn't get it, so then he went on to do I Know What You Did Last Summer the following year. Elizabeth Berkley auditioned for the role of Gail Weathers, but was immediately turned down due to the backlash she received for Showgirls. Brooke Shields was nearly cast as Gail after Janine Garofalo turned down the role. So there's some names. This one got me. Leonardo DiCaprio and Holly Marie Combs screen tested together for the roles of Billy Loomis and Sidney Prescott. And also, Joaquin Phoenix turned down the role of Billy Loomis. Just think about how many different ways this could have went. Melissa Joan Hart, Brittany Murphy, Alicia Witt, Melanie Linsky, and Melinda Clark auditioned for the role of Sydney. Reese Witherspoon turned down the role, and the studio offered the role to Claire Danes. And the last one I've got is also casting. Seth Green, Breckin Meyer, and Jason Lee auditioned for the role of Randy Meeks. So just some crazy names that auditioned or were considered for these roles.
So the budget for this movie was in between 14 and 15 million, depending on where you look. And It made $173 million at the box office out off of that budget. That is insane. And that's just with that initial release. It has been released in theaters since. That total did not include that. Hence why that number is the reason why we have 5 more of these after, and we're getting another one soon to come here. So definitely was a huge success, completely changed the genre, so much so that the next 5 years were spent by Scream copycats.
All right, before we jump into our favorite kill in the rating, I'm going to give a fun fact, too, that I read. The only reason Wes Craven took this job was because Drew Barrymore was cast. And I'm about to say something controversial that I don't think should be controversial. Brian mentioned this in our first review, and Guy Busick has mentioned this in other interviews I've heard him do. Wes Craven gets a lot of credit for this franchise, as he should. But this movie is good because of Kevin Williamson.
Oh, absolutely.
Big facts.
Yeah. Like, Wes Craven it kind of just fell into his lap. We got to give the props to this movie to Kevin Williamson for this one. I might not like the second one as much, but 96 is all Williamson.
Yeah.
No disrespect to one of the GOATs.
Well, I mean, Scream 2 would have been good too if it hadn't been fucking leaked and changed 50,000 times too. But Kevin Williamson
3 wasn't Kevin Williamson, so I think that kind of shows you a little bit of a dip there.
And I'll piggyback off that about Wes Craven taking the movie. He also a little bit of factoring into it was that a kid. He said a kid said that he had gone soft and his movies were soft, and so he wanted to make another horror movie. And also, you mentioned Drew Barrymore. I wasn't going to say this because I think it's kind of irrelevant, but it's just Scarface is my favorite movie, so I'm going to bring it up. Her wig in the opening scene is based off of Michelle Pfeiffer's hair in Scarface. So
that's cool.
Yeah.
All right, guys, let's jump to our favorite kill, least favorite kill in the rating. Dustin, you want to go first?
Yeah, let's go ahead. My favorite kill is Casey. I mean, the opening scene is so good, and it's so shocking that they killed the biggest name in the movie immediately. How could it not be her, to be honest? Least favorite kill, I would say Mr. Hembry because it was so random and unnecessary in the grand scheme of things, but Tatum going out via garage door, it doesn't work for me, brother. The rating, like I said, this is the textbook definition of a fun horror movie. It's entertaining. It's highly rewatchable. Very minor nitpicks, like even the ones that I've said are very minor, and I was just looking for something to say negative about it. This franchise, this movie spawned the franchise. It's right there with Saw for being my favorite horror franchise, so I can't say enough good things about it. I'm going to give it a 9.75.
All right, I'll go next. Favorite kill, I agree with you, Casey. I think I picked Tatum on first review, but I'm going to go with Casey. It's the best opening scene in horror, arguably all of film. It sets the tone for the entire franchise. Least favorite kill, I did choose Principal Hembry. And it's not a terrible kill, but just a few stabs to the gut. I just picked it last for this one. I like the Tatum kill. It's unique. All right. I just wrote a little paragraph. December 1996, the horror genre was turned upside down. Kevin Williamson and his self-proclaimed hero, Wes Craven, revived horror. It had gotten stale with mass slasher films coming to an end, essentially. A self-aware horror movie about the tropes of horror movies. Nothing like this had been made. As many of the cast members have said in panels, they hit lightning in a bottle. The casting is elite, their portrayals are elite, and although you can nitpick some things, which are valid, this movie has one of the biggest fan following and launched one of the most successful franchises to this day. I got to attend a Scream panel at Pensacon, and it was one of the best horror moments of my life. I got to meet Billy, Stu, Randy, and Tatum, all of which were delightful. Should that affect my rating of this movie? I'm not sure, you tell me, but it does. I've watched so many panels of the cast, and they all seem so genuine, and they make sure to always thank the fans for supporting them, help feed their families, and loving the work they were a part of. I do not love the Scream franchise, but I do love and appreciate this movie and its cast so much. This gets a 10 out of 10, and I can't wait to eventually meet Sidney Prescott.
Oh, shit.
And I can't wait for David Arquette to come on the show.
This whole cast is more than welcome.
I would like to meet Dewey, too. I forgot about that, but Sidney is the priority.
All right, I'm going to go quick. My favorite kill, Casey, or actually, I'm going to give a little swerve here. I love that throat slash from Kenny. I think that's fucking great, too. I don't have a least favorite kill, and I don't feel like doing one. So my closing... My closing, way back when I gave this thing a 9.5. Why? I don't know why. Hell, it's the millennium. Motives are incidental. This one gets a 10 from me. Let's go.
Yeah, my favorite kill is Casey. It's again the best film opening of all time with a great kill. My least favorite still Tatum. I tried to be a little nicer to it this time because again it's unique or whatever, but I don't know. Just as much as I kind of complain about the stabs and all these movies, I don't know. It just kind of goes against a little bit of the formula. Not realistic enough in my opinion. So. All that being said, look, this is just one of my favorite movies of all time, man. It's a comfort food movie for me. I can watch it anytime and enjoy myself. Love the Matthew Lillard and Skeet Ulrich and Jamie Kennedy. They're all so great in here. And the portrayal by Neve Campbell of Sidney Prescott is iconic. It all started here, though, and a great script from Kevin Williamson, one of the best ever written, in my opinion. And I actually think Wes Craven adds just a little bit of something, the way he makes a movie, I think, adds just a little something to Kevin's script. So perfect duo meeting up at the same time. We've said it a bunch on the show. The stars all aligned for this film, and that's why the stars aligned on this show. I'm also giving this a 10 out of 10.
I threw us off. I said it.
There's still time to change, Dustin. Still time to change.
I'm gonna stick with a 9.75. That's gonna give us a composite score of 9.9375. IMDb has it as a measly 7.4. Those jackasses.
Oh, what the fuck do they know?
Whew, damn high rating. Damn, it deserves it. I mean, if you're a horror fan or a Scream fan, you gotta attend the Scream panel. I mean, ask Brian. The energy was electric. It was amazing. I loved it. I want to go to another one. It was fun
for sure.
But anywho, any final thoughts? I just shout out our blood donors, and we'll announce our next week's pick. Blood donors, really appreciate y'all. Y'all take a big burden off of us. Christina Tower is a new final girl donor. Really appreciate you. Speaking of Jamie Lee Curtis, we'll be doing The Fog in a couple weeks. Camper Level Reoccurring, Clayton J, Nina, Michelle Mirza, the Horror Movie Crew podcast, Alex Seligson, Eric Doolittle, Sean Irwin, Kelsey Miller, and my boy CJ. Our camp counselor reoccurring, Edwin Hernandez Gunn, Joe Swinford, Kylie Denise, all the way from Australia, Adrian Aiello, Karen, Brian Samick, and Andrew Ferguson, a newly upped. He went from a camper level to a camp counselor. Really appreciate you, brother. Next week, taking on one of the biggest horror movies of all time, 1978's Halloween. I'll make sure I turn my mic on for this one so Brian doesn't have to fight for his life editing that son of a bitch. Looking forward to doing that one. Any final thoughts before we get out of here, guys? All right. I think it's been a great idea redoing some of these older reviews. They deserve our best. And Brian mentioned we may do this again for the years to come, maybe just one or two, but I think it's a good idea. I think these movies deserve our best. So, yeah, one of the best movies in horror of all time. Y'all have a good one. Thank you for listening.
Just want to remind everybody.